Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their diverse stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'd also appreciate it if you could give us a positive rating and review, as it will help others to learn about autism stories. On today's episode, Bridgette Hamstead joins us to discuss supporting and empowering autistic women and how she supports organizations to develop neuro-inclusive environments. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Bridgette, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'd like to kind of start out our conversation by learning about your story. Where would you say your story in the autistic community begins?
So when I was younger, in high school, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which my parents immediately kind of rejected and told me that that was a secret and that I could not tell anyone that. I certainly couldn't tell the school or ask for accommodations, or certainly not an employer when I grew up, that this was deeply shameful and like you can't talk about it. And so that was very isolating and also very confusing because I still didn't really understand what ADHD was or like what it meant for me that I was ADHD. I just knew I struggled a lot with a lot of things that other people didn't seem to. Whenever I would kind of bring up ADHD with my parents, they would immediately kind of say, well, that's an excuse. It's just an excuse and you need to overcome it. Kind of much later, when I was older, I was working in a lot of nonprofit spaces, kind of going in and doing a lot of overhauling of broken systems and things like that. And I ended up working for several disability nonprofits and was asked to spearhead a project for a big name disability nonprofit here in New Orleans, where I was finding and training autistic youth in coding and computer related, skills, and then finding them jobs in the tech industry. In New Orleans, and it sounded like a great program to me, and I learned a lot about autism kind of through working with that program. Sort of started putting things together, had my daughter evaluated for autism, who had also already been diagnosed with ADHD, and she was very clearly autistic. And so kind of through her diagnostic process, I sort of came to realize that I also was autistic, self-identified in that way. And I did, the autistic deep dive into that. And I read every book that was available on neurodiversity and autism specifically. That kind of consumed me for a while. And our family, we also have another autistic daughter from my partner. That's kind of where it began and kind of how it evolved. And then sort of through that self-identification, I realized that I had to kind of let go of my relationship with my parents and sort of embrace my own neurodiversity and connect with others who were neurodivergent. And that's kind of where all of that really started. And my world really started opening up when I was able to find others like me and share similar experiences.
Kind of talking about finding others like you, you founded Fish in the Tree. Can you tell our listeners about how Fish in a Tree provides programs that provide empowerment and that develop community for those that are neurodivergent?
Sure. So kind of with my identification as autistic, I was sort of at a point where I was thinking about autism and neurodiversity as culture and as a specific culture, especially within the US. And I went to a conference in Italy that had to do with It was a bringing together of all of the First Nations and Indigenous peoples from across the globe. And a lot of the presentations I went to were about their Indigenous culture and their communities and their ways of support within their communities. And I learned a lot of different words for neurodiversity within those cultures and how they're celebrated, and that they have a special niche that they serve within that community, that they're cherished and celebrated in many of those communities, and that there's no specific idea of deficit within a lot of those communities. It's all about, you do what you can do and we'll do what we can do and we'll all support each other. And I just thought that was really beautiful. And it was so interesting to find it, as a common thread in many of the cultures that we were being exposed to that week. I went with the Homa Nation and their sister tribe, the Jaruna people of the Amazon, and everyone was in their native dress and they were sharing their rituals and their community with us. And it was really beautiful. And I was very touched. And I think the day after we returned, we founded Fish in a Tree, a cultural and community center here in New Orleans for neurodivergent people, especially autistic people. What our organization does, it's a nonprofit 501c3. And we had a physical space that we shared with another organization. So it was a physical community center, and we had programming that we offered. We tried to sustain it, but the idea of neurodiversity and that perspective and that movement has not quite trickled down to the Deep South where we live. And so it was hard to find an audience who identified as neurodivergent and identified, with that language and with those ideas. So we kind of pivoted and moved all our operations online, and now we have a virtual platform. On our virtual platform, we do have a lot of offerings, and then we offer local programming through our partner sites with the Children's Museum and the library system and other places here in New Orleans. But our programming is vast. We have children's programs. We have a sensory story time program for children and parents and families. But we focus a lot of our services for autistic adults and other neurodivergent adults because that's really lacking, kind of all over the country. There's a lot of services for children, but there's not a lot specifically for adults. So we have a lot of mutual aid and support groups. We have groups for neurodivergent trans people, neurodivergent LGBT people. We have support groups for parents of neurodivergent children, and support groups for neurodivergent parents of children of any neurotype. And then we have like an art and craft together program where people get together virtually to work on their various crafts and projects and talk, each other through that. We have body doubling power hour where we have people come together for body doubling, which is very beneficial for neurodivergent people, as we've been seeing lately. We have a book club, neurodiversity book club. Yeah, late identified, recently diagnosed mutual support group. We also have a group for people who have left their church and are looking for a spiritual community that is not a specific organized religion. So it kind of runs the gamut. We have a host of programs and services that we offer.
Yeah, you have a lot of really cool programs, and you had mentioned the sensory-friendly story time, and I wanted to ask you about that because I love hearing about programs like this because as a child, I didn't really get to hear stories that were neuro-inclusive. Kids growing up now, it seems like we're slowly moving in the right direction. So I'm just wondering, with this sensory-friendly story time, have there been particular stories that have really resonated with you?
Sure. Yeah. So I also, of course, was not exposed to any sort of neuro-affirming thought, language, or books growing up. It was definitely not something that was available. And the sensory-friendly story time is a cornerstone project of Fish in a Trees. We were always going to do this program. It was always part of the original thoughts about running Fish in a Tree. And so it's very important to us. And it's hosted locally by our local children's museum. And the program has local neurodivergent film and theater actors who come and read neuroaffirming books to neurodivergent children and their families. There's a sensory-friendly activity component, sometimes related to the book, sometimes not, for the children to do. And then kind of the secret hidden point of the program is there's also sessions with experts on neuroaffirming parenting for the parents in attendance. One of the things that was just personally very delightful to me was that we read a series of Nell Harris's books. I don't know if you're familiar, but Nell is an Australian children's book author, and she has 4 books out. I think she's working on a 5th currently, one of which is My Brain is a Race Car. When we did that book, there was a great presentation by a local theater actress who just did wonderful things, connecting with the kids, connecting with the book. And then we had Nell Harris kind of be a satellite, connect with the parents in the audience and give a presentation on radical love and radical acceptance of your neurodivergent children. And it was just beautiful. I mean, there were tears, there was laughter. It was really, for a lot of parents, for most parents in attendance, this is the first time that they were hearing neurodivergence talked about in a positive way. This was the first time that they were hearing, their children being celebrated and these ideas of their differences being, something that's more to love about their kids as opposed to, something that detracts from, their parenting experience. So, it was really beautiful. We did 12 sessions over the summer, and it was just really well received and really well attended. And we hope to do it every summer going forward. But it was an amazing program. We're collecting stories for next summer, connecting with authors and local experts and national experts to kind of speak to parents about neuroaffirming parenting and ways to create sensory-friendly home environments, et cetera, anything to help the kids.
Another one of your programs I wanted to ask you about was the Empower Her program that's designed to support and empower autistic women. Can you tell our listeners more about the kind of support that autistic women receive from this program?
Yeah, absolutely. So Empower Her is another one of our cornerstone projects. It's recently funded by Next for Autism, and we're launching the first cohort of the program in January. And the program is pretty innovative. So it's specifically for late diagnosed and recently diagnosed autistic women. The program has different components. The first component of which is once you're interviewed and accepted into the program, you receive quite a large delivery of a sensory kit. And in that kit are full-size items, loop switch, earplugs, heated lap pad, a Japanese Zen garden for your desk. There's sleep masks, there's scent diffusers, there's fidget tools, books about sensory sensitivities and looking after your autistic self. All kinds of wonderful sensory items. The package is worth over $500, and it's and the entire program is no charge. So participants receive this package along with a manual about sensory sensitivities and how to use the products in the kit to manage sensory sensitivities. And all of the items are curated to be very, these are very nice items, and they're able to be used in the home and professional environments. So they're very sleek, very non-assuming things that you can have in the office, and they don't look like toys, can be an issue. And then partnered with the sensory kit is a twice monthly virtual meetup of all of the group members. And for each session that they meet, there is a subject that has to do specifically with the very unique experience of autistic women. So topics ranging from online dating to domestic violence, from menstruation to menopause, et cetera, all of the very unique things that autistic women experience in a very individual and specific way. And we have experts from all over the country who have given their time and energy into this project to address all of these subjects with our participants. And then there's a guided discussion after the presentations. And there's a component of community building. And then between sessions, all of the participants are connected together and they receive articles and toolkits and resources having to do with the themes and other things that we're not able to get to in the program. So it's an intensive. It runs from January to May. Yeah, we're really excited about it. We're really proud of it. It's kind of the model for several other programs that we're hoping to launch that are similar but for different audiences.
I'm curious about the interview process in the sense that as autistic people, when we hear the word interview, sometimes we're triggered. But I'm curious kind of what goes into that interview process for this program.
Sure. It's less of a process. It's more of a get to know you. What are you hoping to get out of the program? Just a meet and greet kind of. It's very informal. People do it in their pajamas. The interviewer has done it in her pajamas. It's very unmasked. It's really just to make sure that you're committed to the program and that once we send you the package that you'll still engage in the online sessions. It's just to make sure that all parties are committed and interested in going forward with the project.
I feel like everything in life we should do in our pajamas. Like, why should there be? Why do we have to do anything beyond that?
Never the clothes,
Yeah, for sure. So kind of beyond the community programs with Fish in a Tree, you provide consulting services to organizations to help them create neuro-inclusive environments. So I found organizations often have surface level inclusivity. So I'm wondering kind of through your consulting, how you help these organizations move to past kind of this surface level thing if they're truly ready to do so.
Yeah, so we see that a lot too. There'll be an inclusion statement that says that, we accept all neurotypes, or even if they use that language, they probably don't even use that language. But, and that's not often, evident in their practices or attitudes or implementation of, whatever it is that they do. We do see that, and that's, upsetting to say the least. But when organizations come to us, they're usually ready to really do work, which we've been, very happy to hear. One of our first clients was a children's museum that was interested in learning more about autism specifically, but neurodiversity in general, and how they could make their programming and their spaces accessible. Through that partnership, we learned a lot. They learned a lot. We kind of cover a lot of the basics, first, so that there is an understanding of why we are doing these things. So we do training and education with the leadership, with the staff, faculty, if we're working with a university, student leaders, if we're working with a school. And just to get people to understand, like, these are the people that you're serving, and this is how they think differently, and this is how they operate differently, and these are the common accommodations that are most helpful for neurodivergent people. And then we do what's called an accessibility audit, and so we actually go into the daily operations and the handbooks and all the policies and procedures. And we do a very thorough review of those things and make recommendations on how those things can be neuroaccessible and neuroinclusive. And we compile a big report, and then we walk them through the report and try to help them implement those programs. And then we follow up with the updates that are being made And we do a lot of data collection to see how effective they are in actual people's lives, or their clients or customers or people who attend their venues. We really do. It's a hands-on process, and it's not a checklist of, oh, if you have dim lights and you have earplugs available, like, then you're accessible. That's not really how it works. There's some attitudinal changes that need to happen. There's some social changes that need to happen, definitely environmental changes. But without that understanding of who this audience is and what it is that they need to have a pleasant experience, you can have all of the check-a-box accommodations that you want, but it won't truly be inclusive. So we try to really work with people in addition to tweaking policies and providing accommodation.
Now, Fish in a Tree is located in New Orleans, and that's a city certainly known for its festivals. I'm curious about kind of your consulting and collaboration. Have you worked with any local festivals to become more neuro-inclusive? And if so, what's been your experience in working with them?
Sure. So we're doing that work currently. It's a very big project, trying to, kind of hit the ground running. And you're right, New Orleans does have a huge festival culture and experiences. In New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette, and all the surrounding areas, you could probably find 3 or 4 festivals to attend just about any weekend. They're very prevalent. We love a good party down here, but most of those festivals are not accessible. They're big, they're crowded, they're loud. There's multiple music venues that are kind of have overlapping sound waves that you're encountering. They're just not that accessible. So we have partnered with Shrimp Fest, which is a local festival to New Orleans. We work with the co-founders of Shrimp Fest to make their festival the most neuro-inclusive and neuro-accessible festival in South Louisiana, probably in all of Louisiana, I'm sure. Our current project is, we just had Shrimp Fest pass about a month ago. Their next is next year at the end of October, early November. With the next year's festival, it's going to be an absolute model of accessibility and festival going. There will be special sensory-friendly tents for people to go and be during the festival that are quieter and offer accommodations. There will be a sensory-friendly indoor space for them to attend. There will be sensory bins, stations for kids to sift through rice and dried beans and, get their hands in some different sensory experiences. They dig for things. There's different things to find in the bins. It's fun. All of the signage is very clear. There's a lot of signage that directs you all over the festival. The maps are very clear, and they correspond to the signage and the color coding of the signage that you'll find throughout. So the venue itself is modeled in a circular way. So you never miss anything. If you stay on one path, you can encounter everything. And you can also skip things if you don't want to encounter something on the path, so that everything leads you back to where you started. So you really can't get lost. So we're doing a lot of that. So it's going to be a true model of accessibility. And then we are, before the festival, we are hosting a symposium. We're inviting all of the festival makers in South Louisiana to attend, and we're going to have a panel of experts who are going to speak about accessibility and inclusion in festivals and Mardi Gras, which are our big parades and our big carnival that we do. The attendees, the festival makers who are in attendance, will be invited to attend Shrimp Fest to see all of that accessibility in action, and hopefully lead to new partnerships with other festivals like Jazz Fest and French Quarter Fest, to name 2 of hundreds. So that we can make these very dear cultural experiences available for everyone that live down here.
I'm interested in because with festivals, most festivals want to grow their attendance and things like that. I'm curious about the conversations you've had, maybe regarding that, but also making them as accessible and as inclusive to as many people as possible.
Yeah, so we did a lot of research last year, and we found that there are many neurodivergent people. They themselves don't find festivals accessible, so they avoid them, or they have family members who are neurodivergent who don't find them accessible and can't attend, so the whole family doesn't go. So there's a lot of people that are avoiding not only festivals but Mardi Gras, which kind of seem to get crazier every um, so there's a lot of avoidance of festivals, which is a huge part of the culture down here. It's kind of hard to avoid it. So it's something you have to do on purpose. And then we did observe other families with neurodivergent members who were in attendance who were bringing their own accommodations. They were wearing their headphones or their earplugs, and they were wearing wearable blankets, and they were doing all the things that they needed to do for themselves. That's great if you know how to accommodate yourself and you're able to do that, and you're comfortable in attending an event. But that should be provided for you. That shouldn't be something that you have to plan out all on your own just to attend a cultural event. That means that we're failing. It's very important to us to have all of the accommodations in place ahead of time and during the festival, so that people, have access to all the resources that they need. The accessible pavilions, the tents that we'll have available at Shrimpfest next year, we'll have a lot of physical accommodations that'll be on offer. We'll have loop earplugs, we'll have fidget tools, we'll have, blankets and weighted blankets and, all that kind of good stuff for people to use, because oftentimes we don't know what will help until we try it. And so, we just want to have those things available for people just to see what that's about. Maybe they'll learn something new about themselves that they can take into their daily lives, which would be, ideal. That would be great.
Now, whenever I talk with advocates doing great work to help the neurodivergent community like yourself, I also wonder about, from a personal perspective, as burnout can be very prevalent in these situations. So, what are some things you do to minimize the likelihood you'll go through burnout and to make sure you're, kind of taking care of yourself so at the same time you can continue to support so many others?
Sure. Well, I wear my pajamas a lot.
Great start.
No, for sure. I have a close friend who is a burnout researcher, and she also has a podcast, Beyond Chronic Burnout, that I've been on and have, can talk extensively about this topic. And I'll try not to on your podcast. But there's a lot of things that I have found over time that work for me. I used to encounter burnout a lot when I was undiagnosed because I was a bit of a perfectionist. Everything had to be perfect all the time. And I had to, you hear that people tell you give 100%. Well, for me, 100% was 150%. And I was doing it all the time, and I lived, with burnout constantly. And so kind of things that I have learned, relatively recently. I don't work for other people anymore. I started my own organization, and I kind of in charge of my own time. Our organization is all neurodivergent led, neurodivergent staffed, neurodivergent advised. So we have a lot of neurodivergent people that are coming together to make Fish in a Tree happen and work. Our program facilitators are all neurodivergent. So it's a lot of not only managing my potential for burnout, but also managing a lot of other people's potential for burnout. So we have core hours between 11 and 2:30 during the day when we're available to each other. But other than that, you kind of have to very respectfully ask for someone's time. And they're allowed to say that they're not available. And that's just, part of our culture that's respected. I personally put a buffer between meetings. I always have 30 minutes between meetings, so I don't do meetings back to back, so that I can fully process what happened in a meeting and I can prepare for the next. I'm actually a Zen Buddhist, so I have a morning practice, a morning meditation practice that I do every day. I take a lot of moments to kind of breathe deeply and feel grounded and connect with what I'm doing that day. And so I find that helps me really be in the moment and to know when my body needs rest and to know when I, need a brain break. And I do take those breaks. I used to feel bad about taking breaks and that they weren't necessary or even sleeping like, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I have all this 150% to give, I can't sleep. But I have learned that sleep is very important, and to have good sleep hygiene and to make sure that I do sleep. And I have late mornings. I don't get up until later than I used to get up to go to work every day. I'll get up about 8 and I'll have a cappuccino and I'll just kind of sit with myself for a minute just to kind of, and so kind of all of those things combined really helps me to be doing my work, which I still do my work at 150%, but I do it in shorter bursts, kind of managed by getting enough sleep and resting throughout the day. But it's actually improved my productivity, knowing when to rest and building in kind of breaks for myself. And it helps, all the people on our team, because when somebody's in burnout, the whole team kind of isn't able to do what they need to do. So we really try to make sure that, everybody else on the team is sleeping and getting the time that they need. We do a lot of body doubling, so we're supporting each other in our work. Yeah, I mean it's just kind of keeping an eye on that and making sure that you're balancing rest with work.
And how can our listeners learn about you, Bridgette, and Fish in a Tree beyond this interview?
Sure. So you can visit Fishnetry NOLA, NOLA.org is our website. It's under construction. We're adding some new pages soon, so check back. It'll probably look different in a month, but we're adding a blog and a video archive, and a services page that has to do with our consulting and our speaking. And also, I'm on LinkedIn, Bridgette Aber Hamstead. So you can always connect with me there.
Well, Bridgette, thanks so much. And I will definitely be checking out the website in a month to see all the exciting changes. So thanks so much for your time today. It was wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much to Bridgette for the conversation. To learn more about Bridgette, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you and would especially love to hear from you on what accommodations would you like to see for autistic people at festivals. Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to lead self-directed, purpose-driven lives through our customized life coaching and community groups. So please join us today to experience judgment-free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.